tons of popular books out there, and I've read quite a lot of them myself. And there are quite a few that live up to the hype, and there are also a lot that don't. And because your time is very valuable, today I'm going to be going over which books you should read and which books just aren't worth your time. If you're new here, hi, I'm Katie. I love talking about books and other hobbies on my channel, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Quick disclaimer before we get into the video, these are all of my opinions. Remember, reading is subjective, and these videos are just for fun because we like talking about books with each other. So if you like a book I don't recommend and vice versa, that is okay. We're all just having fun reading what we want to read at the end of the day. We're just gonna pop right on into it with some Allie Hazelwood books, specifically what got her started, which are her STEM rom-coms. I have two in my hand right here. I used to own the other one, which we'll get into a second. You'll probably understand why I don't own it anymore. But all these books are following women in STEM. The OG on BookTok, of course, is The Love Hypothesis. This is one of those OG BookTok books that I read whenever I first started getting into reading years ago as an adult, and I still think fondly on it to this day. This is following our quirky main character, Olive, and I feel like a lot of Allie Hazelwood's main characters in these STEM novels are very similar. They kind of give off that quirky, I'm not like other girls, kind of vibe, you know? All of our main character in The Love Hypothesis quite literally wears galaxy leggings, but you gotta look past that, okay? Because this book is just so much fun. Long story short, Olive ends up fake dating a professor, and she's currently a PhD candidate, so it's kind of frowned upon, but she's never been his student, so it's kind of fine, but also just still like a little weird, like with the dynamic. It's also a slow burn. I would say this is the least spicy of all of her books, and I just love the fake dating trope. I would definitely say this one is still worth the read even today. Love on the Brain, however, which was her second STEM rom-com, I don't recommend because it kind of felt very copy and paste of The Love Hypothesis, just not done as well, because if it was done as well, I would have ate it up. Love on the Brain is following our main character Bee, and she gets selected to be a part of a neuroengineering program with NASA, and she's actually co-leading this project with Levi, and he's kind of like her arch enemy from grad school. So this is enemies to lovers, but it does have a very similar Grumpy Sunshine plot as The Love Hypothesis did. I didn't mention it, but it does have Grumpy Sunshine. And because this one came right after The Love Hypothesis, I feel like there were a lot of plot twists that were kind of similar, and it just wasn't as effective as The Love Hypothesis was, so I would say skip out on this one. But the last STEM novella, Love Theoretically, I would definitely recommend. This is following our main character Elsie, and she's a theoretical physicist, and she's really strapped for cash, so she's willing to do any odd job out there, and one of those is being a fake girlfriend. And one of her fake clients, aka one of her fake boyfriends, his brother is a part of the physics department at MIT, where she is currently applying for a job. So there's a lot of drama going on. It's very fun. I feel like this one gets a little bit realer than The Love Hypothesis does. Our male main character Jack sees right through Elsie and the mask that she puts on for everybody else, and I feel like it's just very refreshing to have a male main character like that, even though it's not like the most realistic, but it's a very fun time, and I highly recommend not only Love Theoretically, but also The Love Hypothesis. Moving on to a fantasy standalone, which is The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab. I was so late to the game on this one. This is an OG BookTok book as well. It's been out for so long now, and I'm kicking myself that this sat on my TBR cart for so long because this book is absolutely fantastic. This is following our main character Addie, and in very simple terms, she ends up making a deal with the devil where she is immortal, but nobody remembers her name, who she is. She is without any connections in this world, even though the world is seemingly her oyster. It is not. She made an unfortunate deal, and now she's been dealing with the consequences of it for 300 years until someday somebody actually remembers her. And it's just a slower paced book in general, but it's definitely worth the read in my opinion. You end up going back in time to Addie whenever this deal originally happened, her figuring things out about how she's gonna make her new life work, her living through times in history, and then you come back to her present day where she's already figured out all of these things over the years. And I just feel like the non-linear storytelling aspect of this was so well done. I've slowly but surely figured out that non-linear storytelling is some of my favorite type of storytelling, because figuring plot points out about your characters in the moment that they're experiencing these things happening to them, in my opinion, is so much more interesting than just being told them. And it talks so deeply about the human connection as well. The Invisible Life of Addie Larue is definitely a must read in my opinion. Next is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I actually only read the first book in this series, and that is because I just had no interest in continuing it. This is going to be a pass for me. This is following our main character, Avery Graham. She's in high school, and she randomly gets this notice that she is the heir to this billionaire's fortune that she's never met before. I feel like this book was so overly hyped up and saying there were so many fun like riddles and puzzles and all of these things happening that when I read it, I was kind of disappointed because I was just expecting more extravagant puzzles and riddles, and it just didn't live up to my expectations. For that, I think personally you could skip this one. But another series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes that I definitely recommend is her Naturals series. There are 4 books in this series and then a final novella at the very end. The first book is The Naturals. The second one is Killer Instincts. Then we have All In, Bad Blood, and the novella 12. These books I feel like just keep getting better and better as you read them. Like the Inheritance Games, this series is a YA mystery series. We're following our main character, Cassie Hobbs, and she is a part of the Naturals program, which is basically YA Criminal Minds. And all of the teens that are in the Naturals program each have their own select skill that they are very good at. And because of that, throughout the series, they are helping the FBI solve cases. I read this series before I read the Inheritance Games, and it was just so fun. And it almost didn't really feel like a YA series at times with some of the more serious and thrilling aspects that were going on, which I enjoyed. I'm 25, and I feel like I'm slowly starting to not love all YA books. And definitely there are a lot of YA moments in here. Like there's a little love triangle in it, and there's a few jokes here and there that do feel YA, but I feel like because there are more serious things happening as well, I can overlook a lot of the YA elements. I would highly recommend this series. It's super fast-paced. A lot of these books I read in a day or two, and they're overall all really great palate cleansers. Next, we're going to talk about the Empyrean Series by Rebecca Yarros. There are currently 3 books out in the series. I'm just going to hold up the first one, Fourth Wing, because if I hold all of them up, they're big books, okay? I'm going to end up with a hand cramp or my arm's gonna start to hurt. So I'm sorry, I'm not doing that, but they're going to be on screen. This series is following our main character, Violet Sorrengail, and you really do just get her own POV. Sometimes you get a few random POVs here and there, but 98% of the time, this story is told from Violet's POV. And I'm just going to read you the brief synopsis in the front of the book because I feel like it's going to explain it better than I can with my own words, honestly. 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail was supposed to enter the Scribe Quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. Now, the commanding general, also known as her mother, has ordered Violet to join the hundreds of candidates striving to become the elite of Navarre. Dragon riders. But it's very challenging to become a dragon rider. Violet is also smaller than everyone else, and it's alluded to that she has an autoimmune disease as well, so things are a little bit harder for her than your average dragon rider, especially because she hasn't really trained for this, and a lot of the dragon riders are like big and bulky and muscular because you gotta stay strapped in on that dragon, of course, and then you're also a part of their army. Basically, Fourth Wing, the first book, is all about Violet's journey into becoming a dragon rider, into how she fits into the school, and it's also enemies to lovers. She ends up falling in love with Xaden Ryerson, the bad boy leader of dragon riding. This first book I loved when I read it. And I'm low-key tempted to go back and read this one now because when I read it, I hadn't read a lot of fantasy yet. I think I had only read 1 or 2 other fantasy books, and this is a fantasy book that's written like a romance. And I really did love this first one. It was very fun. I liked the romance elements. I absolutely love the dragons. They all have such big personalities and they're written so well. I feel like the dragons really make this book what it is. But once we get on into the rest of the series with Iron Flame, this is where things started to go a little bit downhill for me. I feel like Fourth Wing had really good pacing. It had a lot of action. It was just very fun and enjoyable. I also feel like first books in a fantasy series are a lot more simple than the later books, in my opinion, because you're just trying to get to know all of the characters in the first book. And when we get to the second book, it felt like we were just vibing. It felt like there was no clear plot because in the first book, we're literally like in the school. She's trying to become a dragon rider and work towards these goals and getting stronger. But in the second book, it's just kind of like there. The romance doesn't really feel as satisfying. It does end off with a crazy, that's not a word, crazy cliffhanger, but the rest of the book, I don't even remember what happened in it. And I remember it just dragging, and I just didn't have a very good reading experience. And then I go in to the next one, Onyx Storm. I definitely liked it more than Iron Flame, but I feel like because we were starting to get into other plot points and other political things going on in the world, there just weren't enough explanations and like specific things talked about in depth because we were also trying to do a lot of romantic things. There was a lot of back and forth with the romance, and I do like romantasy as a genre, but you need to do the romance and the political storylines well in order for me to enjoy it, and I just feel like they both weren't done well after Fourth Wing. We also have a ton of characters, and I feel like because there are so many, it takes away from some specific characters being special. And randomly at the end of Onyx Storm, we got a few POVs from people, and I didn't even know who some of these people were or really thought that they were that important. This one also kind of has a crazy ending, but I feel like a big thing with BookTok is we keep slapping on specific tropes that we know do well, that people love, like enemies to lovers, and also having crazy plot twists at the end. But a crazy plot twist at the end doesn't make up for an entire book where the plot felt a little bit all over the place and just didn't work for me. And I know a lot of people don't feel this way about this series. In my personal opinion, I don't recommend this series. I feel like there are so many other fantasy series, some that I'm going to talk about right now, that are also very popular, that are a lot more worth your time than this series, in my opinion. Overall, I feel like this is a very vibes-based fantasy. If you want to know all the answers, want to know all the political things that are going on and every little thing here and there, like I do in order to feel invested, I don't think you're going to enjoy this. But if you don't and you're just there for a fun, good, jolly time, I think you might like it. I feel like this one is a very case-by-case basis, but if you're asking my opinion, which if you're watching this video, you kind of are, I personally just don't recommend. Next, we have some Kristen Hanna books. I'm first going to talk about The Nightingale. This is a historical fiction set in World War II, and it is following our two main characters, Isabelle and Vianne. They are sisters, and they're living in France. Vianne lives in the countryside. She has a child and a husband, and Isabelle is living in Paris with her father. She is single. She is more of a free, wild spirit, and you end up getting to see World War II from both of their perspectives. This book was so heartbreaking and so real, and honestly, in my opinion, a masterpiece. This is one of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. I don't know how I'm gonna cope whenever the movie comes out, honestly, and I 1000% recommend this book to you, but you need to be in a good mental health space in order to read this book. I think out of all of her books, you need to check out mental health for this one specifically before you read it, because all of her books, for the most part, pack an emotional punch. And don't get me wrong, I've ugly cried to all of her books, but emotionally, for some reason, I think just because the idea of the horrific things that happened in World War II wasn't just an idea. Like, it was real. And that was hitting me so hard. So just please check in with yourself before you read this, but you must read this in your lifetime. And the other book I'm going to talk about by her is The Great Alone. I loved and adored this book as well. This is following our main character, Lenny. It's set in the 1970s, and you follow her and her family as they figure out how they're going to live off the grid in Alaska. Her dad was a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. You learn a lot of different things about their relationship and the horrific things that have happened there. And as Lenny grows up and opens her eyes as to what is really happening right in front of her, you start to realize it too. And it is crazy how much of an impact this book had on me. This was my first ever Kristen Hanna book. There are tears embedded in the pages of this book. It was just so well done. I love this story so much. I just feel so much for these characters. The found family was perfect. Her writing is unputdownable, and her books overall are just ones that you don't want to skip over. Like, you must read her books. Also, I absolutely loved the subplot of romance in here. It was just very, very sweet and endearing. And you definitely want to make sure your mental health's good for this one too, but you just gotta read her books if you haven't yet. They're so good. Next, we're gonna talk The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I didn't love this. I read this like 2.5 years ago, and I'm honestly just gonna read you my review on Goodreads of it, because since I read it so long ago, I feel like that's just the best way for me to explain it, because I really don't remember a lot about it. This book was just kind of mid to me. I didn't really like our main character, and it was super slow until 2/3 of the way into the book. I felt like there was a lot of fluff and inner dialogue that was just kind of unnecessary, and I had such high hopes, not sure if I'm going to continue the series. And I didn't continue the series. This is following our main character, Jude. She's a human living in the Fae world, and you figure out why really early in the book. Our male main character, Prince Carden, he's a Fae, and he's just like really mean to her, even though they're supposed to end up together. And I guess it's like enemies to lovers, but it just felt, I don't know, like, how are we going to come back from that, bestie? And The Cruel Prince is an incredibly popular book. There are so many people out there who love it. I personally didn't though. I don't recommend it. I think there are so many other series that are worth your time. Next, we're going to talk about another YA fantasy series, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This is a 3-book fantasy series, the first one being Caraval, the second Legendary, and the third one Finale. This is following two sisters, Scarlett and Donatella. Scarlett is the older sister. She's like classic older sister. They lost their mom very young, so she kind of plays like a mom role. She's very type A, and her younger sister Donatella is very type B. She's very wild and free and wants to do what she wants to do. Long story short, they end up getting the opportunity to go to Caraval, which is like this real life carnival that you need a ticket for, but there's just like all of these mysterious things happening. And the whole shtick is it's a game But is it? It's very twisty-turny. It's more of a fairy tale fantasy, very whimsical. The first book in the series, Caraval, I liked, didn't love. I rated it like a 3-star. It was fine. I continued the rest of the series. I should have just DNF'd it because the rest of the series was just meh in my opinion. But once you get on to Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is a spinoff following a side character from the Caraval series, wow. I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series first, and that's the series we're going to talk about next. Now, does the Caraval series come before? Yes, it does. Do I think that you need to read the Caraval series before? No, I ended up reading it after, and I just honestly shouldn't have continued it because it just doesn't match up to the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. So overall, I do not recommend the Caraval series, but I do recommend the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. The first book is Once Upon a Broken Heart. Who would have thought? The second book is The Ballad of Never After, and the third is A Curse for True Love. This series, like Caraval, is a fairy tale fantasy. There's very twisty, turny things happening, plot twists left and right. I've described this series in the past as a fairy tale fantasy mystery almost, just because you can never tell where my girl Stephanie Garber is gonna go with the story. And I'm just gonna read you the synopsis on the back because I feel like it perfectly emulates this story as a whole without me giving too much away. Evangeline Fox has always believed in true love and happy endings until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. Desperate to stop the wedding, Evangeline strikes a deal with the charismatic, immortal Prince of Hearts, whose name is also Jax. But she soon discovers that bargaining with the Prince of Hearts is a dangerous game. He has plans for Evangeline. Plans that will either end in the greatest happily ever after or the most exquisite tragedy. This trilogy is so fun. And even though I read it years ago, it still holds up in my opinion. I seriously love this YA fantasy series. Moving on to another interconnected romance series, we have the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez. We're gonna start with Part of Your World. This is an age gap romance. It's dual POV. We're following our main characters, Daniel and Alexis. Alexis is a doctor. She lives in the city, and Daniel is the mayor of a small town. They're very opposites attract. They live very different lives, and yet somehow they fall in love. This is definitely not my least favorite Abby Jimenez book. We'll get into that in a second. But if you don't want to read all 3 of these books in an interconnected series, I would personally say you can skip this one. This one just didn't really do it for me, and it felt very different from the other 2 books that I'm about to talk about. The next one is Yours Truly. This is following Alexis's best friend, Brianna. It's also dual POV. Brianna is a doctor, and the male main character in this book, Jacob, is also a doctor. There ends up being some sort of misunderstanding, and Jacob has very severe anxiety, so he ends up writing Brianna a letter to try and smooth things over with Brianna, and believe me, it ends up working for him. There's also fake dating in this book. Fake dating is one of my favorite tropes, if you can't tell. This book to me was a really fun time while also talking deeply about the reality of having very crippling anxiety. I feel like anxiety was depicted so well in this book. I personally really love letters in books, and this book was just, it was so good. I really, really enjoyed it, and Brianna and Jacob's connection, I would highly recommend this. Then we get to the third book in the interconnected series, Just for the Summer. I also highly recommend this one. This is following Justin and Emma. Emma is a traveling nurse. She has a lot of deep-rooted trauma, specifically with her mother, which honestly has kind of made her very flaky. She doesn't really like to have deep connections with people. That's why being a traveling nurse is a great job for her. And on a Reddit thread, she ends up talking about how she is cursed with dating. Everyone she ends up dating ends up finding their partner right after they date her. And Justin ends up commenting on that and saying the same thing happens to him. And one way or another, Emma ends up getting her next position as a traveling nurse to be in the city where Justin lives. Justin is a sweetheart. He ends up sending her a Google form asking her about her preferences for their first date. Like, is that not so adorable? Justin is currently the sole guardian of his younger siblings. His life is complicated, but he also understands Emma like nobody else ever has, and is super patient and nurturing and loving towards her. Like, these two are also very meant to be. I do think that when an Abby Jimenez book works for me is when she toes the perfect line of rom-com while also getting very deep into serious things that happen in real life. But going on to the next book that I'm going to talk about by her, Say You'll Remember Me. When the funny rom-com-y things and the serious life things aren't balanced well enough, I feel like that's when it doesn't work for me. Say You'll Remember Me is following our 2 main characters, Samantha and Xavier. They end up going on a date one night and they have this instant attraction to one another, but Samantha's moving the next day. So they're having a long distance relationship over the course of this book. The reason why Samantha is moving though is because her mother has dementia, so she's going to help take care of her. There were so many things about this story that were so deeply sad. Like, this book made me so sad. I feel like when you're talking about those things that are so deep and sad and tragic that people are actually going through in real life, the haha funny comedy moments almost felt like too much. There were also just a lot of references to pop culture that I felt like didn't fit. Whenever I'm reading a book book, I want to escape. Okay, I don't want to be reminded that we have phones and TikTok and about Rhysand from ACOTAR 5 different times. This book, in my opinion, just didn't feel like Abby Jimenez. I would honestly recommend just skipping out on this one altogether. Next is a YA fantasy duology, which is the Crimson Moth duology. The first book is The Heartless Hunter, and the second book is The Rebel Witch. Now, this is following a witch and a witch hunter in a world where witches are exiled. And if somebody sees a witch, they're getting ratted out, or yeah, you get two different POVs in here. Our female main character, Rune, who by day is a socialite. She seems like she doesn't have a lot going on up here. And she plays things off very well because by night she's a witch vigilante trying to save witches and help them get to their freedom. And then we're also following our male main character, Gideon. He is the leader of the Blood Guard who is, you know, on the front trying to get all these witches. And his number one priority right now is trying to find the Crimson Moth. Now, they both end up taking a liking to each other, but it's for their own benefits. This is obviously enemies to lovers. It's so fast-paced, so action-packed, just so much fun. I had such a blast reading this. It's very cat and mouse, but done really well. I really love this first book. Now, I will say personally, I didn't love the second book, Rebel Witch, as much as the first book, but I still think it's a great fantasy duology, especially if you haven't read a lot of fantasy. This would be a great place to start because it's very easy to understand, very straightforward, especially with the world that we're in and the magic system. My biggest gripe with this book is that Rune is a witch, but she doesn't really use a lot of different spells or use her powers to her full capability. Like, you hear about our main character, she is the Crimson Moth. Like, she is the witch baddie helping all these other witches out here. You're telling me she doesn't really know that many spells? Huh? That one specific thing aside though, these books are so fun, fast-paced. I highly recommend this duology. Next, we're going to talk about a very beloved YA romance series, and that is The Summer I Turned Pretty. We have The Summer I Turned Pretty, This Summer Will Be Different, and We'll Always Have Summer. These are very short, very YA, very easy reads. So I feel like for this, it really depends on your age. I think this could be a great romance series for very young readers. Now, if you're over the age of like 16, I honestly think you should just skip out on reading these books and just watch the series because the series is so much better in my opinion. These books are so short to the point where you really don't get enough story, that they add in so much storyline into the show, and it just makes it so much more of a fully developed story with complex and dynamic characters. If you've never heard about the book series or the TV show far, we're following our main character Isabel, but her nickname is Belly. And every summer since she can remember, her mom, and her brother spend the entire summer at her mom's best friend's summer house. Her name is Susanna, and she has two boys. And the boys' names are Conrad and Jeremiah. As you keep reading, there ends up being a love triangle between Conrad, Belly, and Jeremiah. They're set in the summer. There's a lot of drama. I just think overall the show does it so much better to the point where it doesn't even follow the books that much. And like I already said, since they're incredibly YA, I feel like you could find a better summer read or a better palate cleanser if you're over the age of 16 that you could just enjoy so much more than this. Highly recommend watching the show though. I really enjoyed the show. I feel like it's very rare for me to like a show or a movie adaptation more than the book, but that is one of the very rare cases. Those are all the books on my list to talk about today. There are so many popular books that I've read though, so if you guys want to see another video like this one, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps to support my channel. And if you watched until this far in the video, comment down below the peace sign emoji so I know who the real ones are who watched until the very end. And I think that's gonna be it for me today. I love you guys so much. Hope you're all having an amazing day, and I'll see you guys in my next video real soon. Bye guys. The sleeves on this shirt low-key make me feel like a witch. Oh, come on in, queen. Do you need to say something? She's silent. This microphone gives me too much power, truly. Peace.